This week, the world is watching as the Biden administration packs its bags and the Trump administration moves in. How are foreign leaders reacting? The president's son, Hunter, has been issued a pardon. The reaction has been swift and loud. Our panel weighs in. And can the culture for men be elevated by dressing better? One NFL standout thinks that's the case, and he started his own menswear company to prove it. These stories and many more coming up this week on The Lion. Week in Review. Welcome in to this week's edition of The Lion. Week in Review is a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capitol, and your kids. I'm Chris Stigall. And now let's meet our panel, some of the men and women behind the stories at readlion.com. Josh Mann, our managing editor, Michael Ryan, executive editor, and Valerie Cabana is media contributor here at The Lion. Panel, welcome to you all. We start this week with some foreign policy, not typically something we touch on a lot, Josh, but there has been a lot of movement on the foreign policy scene in just the last week or so.
So much, and it's really significant because Biden now is, of course, coming to the end of his term. President-elect Donald Trump is about to be inaugurated, and he's going to inherit quite a few, escalating conflicts around the world, including Israel and Hezbollah, whose ceasefire now is under great strain. The Lion has just published a great roundup of some of these hotspots I hope our audience will take a look at, but also rebel gains in Syria, these rebels who are against Assad, that is escalating and kind of surprising a lot who are in the know on this. Of course, Russian escalation, they are upping their drone warfare in Ukraine. This is partly a response to Biden's reversal of allowing American-made missiles to be used there in Ukraine. Iran's pulling back, though, probably taking Trump's threats seriously. They know what's coming. And also, of course, we've got China, who continues to threaten Taiwan. The fentanyl crisis doesn't seem to be resolving. And Biden recently put new restrictions on semiconductor export. So these are just a few of the things coming or escalating as we have a new president taking office. And it's worth keeping our eye on, not to mention South Korea.
Yeah, and our neighbors to the north and south, I know. The Prime Minister of Canada has flown to Mar-a-Lago. The President of Mexico has been on the phone. So he's been busy. Valerie, yeah, Josh mentions the situation in South Korea, martial law there, which, for a democracy is obviously a pretty jarring set of circumstances.
Yes, and President Yoon declared martial law. The South Korean National Assembly unanimously voted no, we are not going to be having martial law, to which then the president said, okay, we'll walk it back. We're not going to do martial law. But he had already enforced that, and where do we know that has martial law? North Korea. And I guarantee you South Korea does not want to be a part of North Korea. So if he wants martial law, then he could just move to North Korea. But there's rumors floating around that he could face impeachment after this. We'll just see what happens. That
pivots nicely, Michael, frankly, into the international scene and the Biden pardon of his son Hunter. The drugs and the taxes get a lot of attention, but that's really not what I think a lot of people are focused on when they talk about Hunter Biden.
No. We had Mark Penn, the Democratic pollster, come out against the Biden pardon, which is refreshing candor from a Democrat. There's lots of others who are trying to excuse the pardon, which is inexcusable, especially for its breadth, the amount of time, and it covers just about anything he could have done in an 11-year period. The irony of this pardon is that it's put back on the radar this Biden family foreign money shakedown, which arguably is the worst scandal in the past 8 years in a very crowded field of scandals. You were talking about millions of dollars flowing into the Biden family from foreign adversaries, actually. And for what? What did they get in return other than political influence? I think we need to know. And how is this legal? And how did it not compromise the Biden administration?
It brings to mind that perfect phone call, Josh, that President Trump conducted in his first term that got him impeached. The claim was that he was digging up dirt on his future political rival, which ended up being Joe Biden, who ended up becoming the president after Trump in that first term. You think there's merit to that phone call now?
I don't know really about that phone call, but I can tell you that it's unprecedented, this pardon, and it's shocking. It's not entirely surprising, but I think even when you see the media on the left surprised because Biden repeatedly promised not to do it, I think it does raise the eyebrows. We need to look into it. I think it gives credence to some of the claims that the Biden family was compromised, that Hunter specifically was benefiting from his father's role as vice president of, by the way, the most powerful country in the world. And this kind of blanket pardon, anything done between, for these basically 10 years, that seems nuts on its face.
And Valerie, as we talk about these different confirmation hearings that will come, these different nominees that President-elect Trump has put up, people like Pete Hegseth, right now his background is being scrutinized, alleged personal issues from behavior to women to what have you. It does make one wonder if Hunter Biden, for all of the reasons we've listed here, gets a pardon. It's a little hard to justify beating up on a guy like Pete Hegseth.
It's just a conflict of interest. Shouldn't have happened. And I understand that it's his son and he loves him, but realistically, he committed crimes and he needs to be able to be served justice with whatever that would look like. And when it comes to people who are a part of the Trump administration, we are going to see them be scrutinized because they're part of the Trump administration. It's just a part of what they're going to have to endure. And if those things are true that he's being accused of, then I think that everyone would agree to get him out.
Michael, the situation really, and it dovetails nicely with the editorial you've beautifully written that people can read at readline.com. Are we in an era now where we're not going to be, and I say we, those who might oppose a particular point of view, I'll just leave it at that. It typically falls in one way. When we talk about cancel culture, the woke culture, it's almost always conservatives that have ended up having to bend the knee, bow out, pull themselves out of contention for a nomination or something like that. Has the worm turned, I guess is my question, to your column? Are we reaching an uncancelable era where people can ride out accusations like this on the conservative side?
Well, one would hope so. I was just taking, in writing this piece, I was taking an inventory, just a partial inventory of our freedoms. The outgoing administration censored conservatives online. It sent the FBI to talk to conservatives about their social media posts. It tried to jail its political rival and, in fact, did imprison some of his supporters. It hid the president's mental condition until it was too glaring. It ignored the Supreme Court ruling on student loan forgiveness. It actively facilitated an illegal immigrant invasion and imprisoned even the most peaceful January 6th protesters. All of this is anti-free speech. It's anti-rule of law. And frankly, it's un-American. It's anti-American. One election is not going to fix all this, especially when you think about the fact that so many people in the government, in the deep state, went along with all this, and so many people went along with it on November 5th. You have to ask yourself why. And the conclusion that I come to is that schools have failed utterly in teaching Americans about America. The only way to fix this, you can't do this with one election, the only way to fix this is with a more America-friendly education system and a founder-style reliance on God.
You know, Michael, I heard the former host of Meet the Press, I don't know what he does now, Chuck Todd, on a podcast with Chris Cillizza, who I think is with CNN, or maybe I'm not sure where they are now. But anyway, they're doing a podcast, and they're very angry and animated at Joe Biden. And they're angry because they say he and his wife, First Lady Jill Biden, were selfish in even running for the presidency now because of their daughter-in-law Hallie's addiction, along with their son's addiction, and that if they had been personally invested in their family, the selfless thing to do would be to not run. I don't remember hearing that from members of the media when Joe Biden declared his candidacy. Do you?
No, I don't. And, a lot of people blame Jill Biden as well for having had to know about his mental condition and still running with it. And the fact of the matter is that they stayed with this candidacy much longer than benefited the Democrat Party. By the time that he bowed out it was too late for another candidate to come forward, certainly through a democratic process, which she didn't, and to establish herself as a legitimate major party candidate. It was just too late. And so there were a lot of people, and I think this needs to be investigated. There were a lot of people involved in the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental condition. And it goes from the Democratic Party to the inner circle of the White House, but also to the media.
You know what I love about the Lion is we can go from foreign policy to political scandal to fashion. The only place you're going to see something this diverse is at readline.com. Josh Mann, our fashionista on staff, has a story about a men's clothing store and an NFL player that we've talked about on this show before.
That's right. Well, I hope I am a fashionista. I'm not sure that I am, but our Kansas City Chiefs' own Harrison Butker, star kicker for the Chiefs, is such a man of fashion. Well, Harrison, it might be no surprise that he has helped found a menswear clothing store. This is made-to-measure custom suits, but really the reason why is because he wants to lift up men, elevate society. Harrison believes that when you approach your life with good habits and discipline, including your own dress and wardrobe, that it will elevate your life all around. And so he approaches his wardrobe kind of like a game-winning kick, and we all know how good he is at those. By the way, over the weekend, Harrison became the most accurate kicker in NFL history, thanks in part to a few field goals missed. He's injured, by the way. But it's no surprise that such a disciplined man would also have so much care about his wardrobe. But we also know Harrison for his strong Christian and Catholic faith, and that's really what motivates him and his co-owners to help challenge men to form good habits, to not be ashamed of their masculinity, to lean into it, to embrace their distinct God-given gender roles in society. And so the menswear really is just a small part of a much larger vision. And I do hope our readers and our audience will look at this story.
Yeah, it's a cultural story, really. And, Michael, that's the thing about Harrison Butker. He seems to have either coincidentally or purposely tapped into something culturally that seems to be happening. If you look at the demographics with young men, they seem to be trending more, if you want, religious. That is, attending worship services, more family-oriented. The way they vote has changed. Is Harrison Butker just reflecting that?
Oh, he might be the right kicker at the right time. Imagine him kicking into hurricane-force winds. That's the task that he's facing, trying to get Americans to dress better. Have you been to Walmart lately? I can imagine that there are no pajama pants at Shepherd's, his store. But he's facing the same headwinds in his rather unfashionable attempt to make men better, to make families stronger. But if anybody can do it, he can. And as his rather controversial speech at Benedictine about all of that shows, he's not afraid of any blowback.
All right, Valerie, tell us the truth. Is a well-dressed man important to you?
Absolutely.
You like that? All right. So you're impressed if we come in with tailor-made clothes from Shepherd's. Is that what you're saying? In the future?
Well, if it was my husband.
Yeah. I'm just saying, would it elevate the show if we all came in better dressed and tailored?
Well, what am I going to wear?
Yeah, well, that's
we
your
need
problem.
A Shepherd's women's line. No, the men would look great in the Shepherd suits. I've checked it out online, and they are truly high quality, absolutely stunning, if I can say that about men's clothing. So, yeah, check it out.
Yeah, it's sharp. It's Harrison Butker is a well-dressed guy, if you haven't seen him. Check out the story at readline.com. Finally, Valerie, back to you on... You know, we talk about college quite a bit here. Normally it's because of the woke culture of college campuses these days. At the Herzog Foundation, we typically talk about K through 12 education, but college is something that we watch closely too.
Absolutely. And the University of Austin in Texas, they have done all of their admissions on merit-based admissions. They're going off of intelligent, merit, and excellence. And these are things that we should be looking for in life when we're applying for a job, when we are applying to college, when we are doing sports. These are things that should be merit-based. And I think in the college system that we see, in the university system, a lot of things have switched over to DEI. Now, I think a lot of that has come to light, and some schools are starting to roll that back, which is incredible. But you should get what you have in life based on your ability to go get those things, not about your color, not about your gender, not about anything other than your ability to grind and work really hard for what you have. My colleague Michael brought up a really great point. Sports is merit-based. When we look at the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'll just use them for reference because we are here in Kansas City, none of those players got where they are because of DEI. They got to where they are because they worked really, really hard, and you've got people from all backgrounds on the Kansas City Chiefs. So I believe that if you work really hard and you strive for something, that you can get there. Nothing should be handed to you.
It's just sort of an interesting philosophical question, and I know one election is probably too much to think would change a culture, but Josh, are we seeing what Valerie was just talking about from DEI to men dressing better, different standards for the family? Can one election change that? Cancel culture being rolled back? Do you think one election has changed the course of all of these things that we've been locked in the last decade or so?
It's a good question. I don't know if the election changed it. It's kind of a chicken and egg question. I think there is a shift happening right now in the culture, which ties to the things you've just mentioned. Now, and I think it also affected the election. Now, I don't know where exactly the shift has come from. I think some people are waking up and realizing that they've been lied to. I think also there may be a little bit of a religious awakening happening in this country. We've seen some hints of revivals here and there. We just published a story this morning about some wondering if we're seeing a fourth great awakening happening in this country. So there is a shift going on, and I think it did affect the outcome of the election. And so, it's hard. We won't probably know until a few years from now exactly how significant or profound it is. But certainly we need some change.
Michael, do you sense that too? There's a bit of a revival or some sort of cultural revolution afoot?
I do, and I agree with Josh that it's hard to know where the chicken ends and the egg begins, because the election can be the turning point here, but it was the shift that led to the election results. I think people are looking for something better in the world. This is a fallen world.
And before we wrap, we always like to take a look at the totality of the stories at readline.com, and we ask the panel, what's their favorite of the week? Valerie, we start with you.
The first article we covered today, we talked about U.S. foreign policy and how things are starting to get heated in different parts of the country. We've got wars breaking out, and I'm just not here for it. And so we're bringing awareness to these things, which is really great. But I would ask the question, how much more is President Joe Biden going to do in his remaining days of president that's going to destroy our country?
Mike, well, he was in Africa. Took a little African trip, Michael. That was a little... I didn't expect that one. What's your favorite story this week?
Yeah, I think it was an airline that had the slogan, "Want to get away." Back to I agree with that. The story this about the hotspots in the world. It's the most important story right now for world peace. Again, this is a fallen world. There are a ton of bad people out there. The good news is that many of them are world leaders. So what's going to go wrong with that? And the last 4 years, it's been like tyrants gone wild. In fact, I'm thinking about getting one of those T-shirts, Tyrants Gone Wild. The left hates a strong America, but the world needs it now more than ever. Josh Mann, your favorite this week?
My favorite story is about Harrison Butker, who wants to elevate men through tailored excellence. And, I had a chance to meet Harrison at the opening of their Leawood location. This is Shepherd's, the menswear company he co-owns. And this was less than 24 hours after he had a knee operation. This was just in October. And he had challenged months before and actually generated a national conversation about motherhood and fatherhood in a commencement speech he gave. And he challenged men in that speech to not take the easy way out and to, quote, do hard things. And, I just reflected a little bit on seeing him stand there less than 24 hours after his operation in his menswear store, because he believes in what he's doing. He wants men to elevate their dress, but really to elevate themselves, their lives, and ultimately society. And so that's my favorite story for those reasons this week. And kudos to Butker and his team for standing by their values and helping spread them to others.
By the way, Josh Mann elevating his game with a tailored jacket today.
That's right.
Congratulations. Well done, my friend. And that'll do it for this week's edition of the Lion Week in Review. Be sure to keep up to date on all the latest news every day at readlion.com. Until next time, for all of us at the Lion, thanks a lot for downloading the show.